For today's lesson, we will discuss and identify properties of triangles. We're going to start with types of triangles.
If you define a triangle by its sides, an equilateral triangle has 3 equal sides, an isosceles triangle has 2 equal sides, and a scalene triangle has no equal sides. But you can also define or describe a triangle by the kinds of angles it has. An acute triangle has 3 sides, or 3 angles, that are less than 90 degrees. An obtuse triangle has 1 angle that is more than or greater than 90 degrees. And then a right triangle has 1 right angle, or an angle that is exactly 90 degrees. Okay? Let's keep going.
Please pause the video and take notes in your math notebook at home. On the sides, equilateral triangle has 3 equal sides. Isosceles triangle has 2 equal sides. Scalene triangle has no equal sides. And of course, equal means the same. And also take notes on the angle. You should already have these angles, but just in case, now is a good time to write it down again because you will use these notes to identify the properties of triangles for today's lesson. Your assignment today is properties of triangles. Properties of triangles is right below the agenda. Make sure that you open this document in Kami before you continue. Properties of triangles.
Okay, so let's take a look at these 4 pictures. Okay, and it says name an angle property of each triangle, circle any right angles, and then name the type of triangle. So if I look at number 1, I can see right away there is a right angle. So this must be a right triangle with the right angle. Okay, and what's the property? Well, it has a right angle. Pretty straightforward. Okay. But if I look at, say, number two does not have a right angle, first of all, so that eliminates that choice. If I look at some of the angles that it does have, this angle is very acute, as is this one. Okay, but when I look at this one right here, up at the top, this is obtuse. Now, how do I know that to be true? Well, when I try to make a square angle from one of the line segments, like so, try to make a square, and again, I'm drawing this freehand, so you have to give me a little latitude here. Here's my square. You'll notice that the angle is wider than the 90 degrees that makes up the part of the square corner. Okay, so that means that this is an obtuse triangle. Okay, so what is the property? Well, property is, I'm looking at the angles, and there is an obtuse angle. So if it has an obtuse angle, it is an obtuse triangle. See, again, the word angle helps us with that. Okay. It'd be like defining or describing cakes. Okay, so if the cake batter is chocolate, that would be a defining characteristic. So what kind of cake is it? It's a chocolate cake. Okay, if the cake batter is red velvet, then it would be a red velvet cake. Okay, so the type of cake is determined by the batter. The type of triangle is sometimes determined by its angles.
Take a look at number 3 and 4 on your own. Ask yourself, what are the properties of the angle? Does it have one right angle? Has angles all smaller than a right angle? Has one angle larger than a right angle? Remember, your right angle can be your basis here. Is it bigger or larger than this angle? If it's smaller, if it goes in, then it's going to be acute. And if it's wider than this right angle, it's going to be obtuse. So your property has to be one of these 3 things. One right angle, angles all smaller than a right angle, one angle larger than a right angle. Your type of triangle has to be one of these three: a right triangle, an acute triangle, or an obtuse triangle. Go ahead and complete numbers 3 and 4 on your own. For the second page of your assignment, we are going to continue identifying triangles. We are going to continue to identify the triangles.
If you take a look at the grid right here, you'll notice that we have 6 geometric shapes. Hey, they're all triangles. I'm done. Right? No. There are many different kinds of triangles, just like there are many different kinds of cookies. There's chocolate chip cookies, snickerdoodle, frosted sugar cookies, lemon cookies, thin mint. So I could go on. So a cookie is not just a cookie. Okay? A triangle is not just a triangle. So the instructions say write the letter or letters that match each statement. So this is kind of like a riddle or a series of riddles where you have to look at these 6 pictures and ask yourself, does that triangle match this descriptor? Okay. Scientists use this all the time when they classify animals. So when they look at a new species, they use the descriptors of is it warm-blooded or cold-blooded? Does it have an exoskeleton? Does it have gills? Does it move air? Is it covered in feathers? Things like that to determine if an animal is a bird, a fish, mammal, an insect, or what have you. So let's classify some triangles. You see it says identify, but really we're classifying. Number 1 asks, does it have perpendicular line segments? Okay, so first it would be useful to know what a perpendicular line segment is. Well, perpendicular means that they are intersecting. They make a 90-degree angle. So if you look right here, there is a 90-degree angle on triangles C and D because we have that telltale little box in the corner that tells us it's a right angle, which also means it's a right triangle, which also means it has perpendicular line segments. So on that line, I would write the letters C and D. Don't separate with a comma. Okay. Number 2 asks, does it have an obtuse angle? Well, we can eliminate choices C and D because a triangle has a total measure.
Looking at your triangles, do you see a triangle that has an obtuse angle? Look at all 6. We eliminated C and D, so now we just have 4. These have right angles. We know they're not obtuse.
Degrees of 180 degrees within the 3 angles that make up the triangle. So if we hit 90 degrees, we don't have enough degrees to spread around to make an obtuse angle as well. So the only ones we can find that have an obtuse angle have to have 2 other acute angles to go along with it. And if you look at E and F, you'll see that these angles here are more than 90 degrees because zoom in really extremely. If I try to create a square, so if I try to create a square angle here, you'll notice that my square little box has a little gappage right there. So it's more than 90 degrees. So unlike C and D, E and F are what we call obtuse triangles, where they have obtuse angles. So we'll just put those letters there, E and F. So that's how we go about doing it. So we have to look at each descriptor, and then we have to think about, well, which of these triangles match. Okay. So some of the clues or riddles help us solve the other ones. For example, if I look at number 1, that has perpendicular line segments. Okay. If I look at the question number 7, does not have any right The definition of a perpendicular line segment is an intersection that makes a right angle. So any triangle that has perpendicular line segments, the others would not. So I could use the fact that I've eliminated C and D as having right angles. Let me solve for number 7. So A, B, E. Okay. So take a look at these triangles, try to sort them into categories to classify them as you would, and try to figure out what makes each of these triangles unique. These are practice skills from earlier in this unit. Sometimes the practice problems will remind you of things we learned in a previous unit, but now that we're already on 210 in our home links, we're now having to be reminiscent about lessons we learned earlier in this unit. List all the factors of 12. Well, factors of 12 are all the numbers I can multiply together to get a product of 12. So, for example, I know that 1 times 12 will give me 12. 12 is also an even number, so I know 2 is involved times 6. And then 3 times 4 is also a factor pair, because 3 times 4 is also 12. So what are the factors of 12? Simply put, would be 1, 12, 2, 6, 3, and 4. And I could list those out in numeric order like so. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 12. Those 6 numbers are the 6 factors of 12. And then lastly, it says name the next 4 multiples of 7. Now I say that because what you see here, 35, what's going to be the temptation? You want to skip count by 5s, because skip counting by 5s is super easy. But they don't want you to skip count by 5s. They want you to skip count or name the multiples of 7. So what is 35 plus 7 going to give you? 5 plus 7 is 12. So my next number must be 42. And then I would add 7 to 42 to get my next multiple, which I'll let you do the arithmetic for that. So skip counting by 7s, not by 5.
Continue your multiples of 7 until you reach the last line. Each time you're adding 7. 35 plus 7, 42. So 42 goes on my next space. 42 plus 7, 49. So 49 goes on my third space. Add 7 to that number. Add 7 to 49. That's your fourth number. Add 7 again. That's your final number. So that's just your quick practice of factors and multiples. As you finish your triangles, do not get discouraged. Ask yourself for number 3, which triangle has right angles? Well, we can see from the pictures, the right angles are identified with the square. So we know those triangles C and D have right angles. C and D have right angles, and we know that because of the square. It lets us know this triangle is exactly, this angle is exactly 90 degrees. Number 4, has acute angles. So looking at these triangles, which triangle has an angle that's smaller than this 90-degree angle? We know for sure it's not D or C. That's what we're looking at. Well, it could be. We could look at another angle. So let's think about that. Do you see any right angles? Yep. Right there on D, I see an acute angle. So this triangle has a right angle and an acute angle. This angle is smaller than 90 degrees. It's smaller than this right angle. So I could put D for my acute angle. Do you see another triangle with an acute angle? Yeah, let's go look at our friend here at C or B. These angles are all smaller than the right angle. So they have acute angles. Smaller than a right angle, less than 90 degrees. Even though we can't measure it, we can see that that angle is a little more narrow than this 90-degree angle. Has more than one kind of angle. Which triangle has more than one angle? Is it this B? No, all of these angles are the exact same. They're all acute angles. What about C? Yes, C has more than one type of angle. As we previously mentioned, it has a right angle and an acute angle. Continue to list the triangles that have more than one kind of angle. What triangle has only one kind of angle? Yes, B just has one kind of angle. All of these angles are acute. We solved 7. Now 8 is a right triangle. And I know for sure that you know that one. Submit this assignment. When you are finished, make sure you turn it in and submit.